You're watching this, so chances are you know a thing or two about World War II. You've seen the documentaries, read the books, maybe even heard stories from your grandparents. You know about the Blitzkrieg, the desperate struggle on the Eastern Front, the D-Day landings, the horror of the Holocaust. But what if I told you that in the midst of this global cataclysm, a phenomenon unfolded that defied all logic, all expectation? A situation so utterly bizarre, so counterintuitive, that it still echoes with profound lessons about human nature, strategic thinking, and the very essence of what a nation fights for. Imagine this: October 17th, 1943. Deep in the heart of Alabama, far from the battlefields of Europe, a young German soldier, barely out of his teens, sits at a table. His name, we don't know, but his story is a composite of thousands. His hands, gnarled and skeletal from years of combat and near starvation, tremble slightly. Before him, an American mess kit, and on that mess kit, a sight that must have seemed like a hallucination. Scrambled eggs, crisp bacon, fluffy white bread slathered with real butter, and a cup of genuine coffee, sweetened with sugar and cream. More food than he had seen in months. In Africa, in the brutal desert campaigns, he'd survived on ersatz, sawdust, bread, and bitter coffee. He weighed 128 pounds, a walking shadow of his former self. 2 years later, that same soldier, a prisoner of war in the United States, stepped onto a ship bound for a defeated Germany. He weighed 185 pounds. He was, by his own account, so well-fed, so prosperous-looking, that his eyes were almost lost in the flesh of his face. He had gained a staggering 57 pounds, a transformation that would be replicated not hundreds, but thousands of times across American POW camps during World War II. This isn't a forgotten footnote in history. It's a living testament to an extraordinary policy, a strategic gamble that paid dividends far beyond mere military victory. While their comrades froze and starved on the Eastern Front, subsisting on frozen horse meat and dwindling, often maggot-infested rations, these German prisoners in America were eating better than most American civilians, and often better than American soldiers themselves. They experienced a prosperity that didn't just reshape their bodies, but fundamentally altered their entire worldview about American capacity, American values, and the very concept of democracy itself. This story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths, to question our assumptions about wartime morality, and to marvel at a foresight that stretched far beyond the immediate conflict. How could a nation engaged in a brutal global war afford such generosity to its enemies? Why did it choose to do so? And what were the unforeseen consequences, the ripple effects that would shape not only the immediate aftermath of the war, but the geopolitical landscape for decades to come? Let's rewind a bit to understand the true depth of this contrast. By May 1943, when Rommel's vaunted Afrika Korps finally surrendered in Tunisia, what remained of his once elite forces was an army in biological collapse. Medical examinations of the captured German soldiers painted a horrifying picture. Widespread malnutrition, rampant vitamin deficiency diseases like scurvy and night blindness, and edema from severe protein deficiency. These weren't just isolated cases. This was an army ravaged from within. Their daily rations had dwindled to a grim parody of what was promised. The official Wehrmacht field ration, the Verpflegungssatz, was meant to provide substantial calories for combat troops. But by the winter of 1942, supply lines choked by Allied air superiority, and desperate logistical challenges meant soldiers received a mere fraction of that. Hard bread, often weevil-infested or replaced by rock-hard heart cakes, was a luxury. Mornings brought Ersatzkaffee, brewed from roasted acorns, sweetened with artificial saccharin if they were lucky. Midday might mean a small portion of tinned meat, usually horse or mule, bulked out with sawdust filler. And evenings offered duramusa, dehydrated vegetables that expanded in the stomach, offering a fleeting sense of fullness but minimal actual nutrition. Imagine the constant gnawing hunger, the pervasive weakness, the slow, creeping deterioration of the body and mind. It was a hellish existence, a stark testament to the collapsing infrastructure of the Third Reich. When these skeletal men, these walking cadavers, as one American medical officer described them, boarded Liberty ships bound for America, their journey of transformation began immediately. These ships, built at an astonishing rate to churn out the cargo for the war effort, now carried up to 30,000 prisoners monthly across the Atlantic. The very first meal at sea, beef stew brimming with potatoes, white bread with butter, real coffee with milk, was more food than many had seen in a week, sometimes longer in Africa. And here's where the stark reality of prolonged starvation hit hard. Many prisoners vomited. Their bodies, accustomed to a diet of desperation and emptiness, simply couldn't process the sudden influx of rich fats and substantial calories. It was a physical shock as profound as the psychological one. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison Matthews, observing prisoners boarding in Oran, noted with a mix of scientific curiosity and profound empathy. These men looked like walking cadavers. Hollow cheeks, protruding ribs, many unable to climb the gangplanks without assistance. We had to begin feeding them carefully. Their systems couldn't handle normal food immediately. This wasn't an act of mercy, not initially, but a medical necessity. Their digestive systems had to be re-educated, slowly, carefully, to accept the abundance that awaited them. This wasn't simply a humanitarian gesture, though the Americans prided themselves on their values. This was strategic brilliance, rooted in international law. The 1929 Geneva Convention, Article 11, stipulated that the food ration of prisoners of war must be equivalent in quantity and quality to that of depot troops, essentially base camp soldiers. For the United States, this wasn't just about compliance. It was a calculated doctrine. Colonel Edward Davidson, in a September 1943 memo, articulated it plainly. Every well-fed German prisoner is potential insurance for American prisoners in German hands. This reciprocity principle was a powerful deterrent. By treating their enemies well, America hoped to ensure its own soldiers received humane treatment. It was a cold, pragmatic calculation wrapped in the guise of international law. The scale of this operation was staggering. Over 425,000 German prisoners were eventually housed in camps throughout the United States. The office of the Provost Marshal General supervised a colossal administrative effort. Comprehensive documentation of daily caloric intake, weekly menu rotations, regular medical examinations, and meticulous tracking of weight changes. The bureaucracy alone was immense, with bi-monthly forms from each camp, inspections by Swiss delegates, and Red Cross monitoring, all ensuring strict adherence to the Geneva Convention. This wasn't some haphazard feeding program. It was an industrial-scale nutritional intervention. The standard garrison ration guaranteed each prisoner substantial daily portions: meat, bread, potatoes, cheese, butter, milk, and unlimited real coffee, not ersatz, along with fresh vegetables and fruit. The estimated caloric total typically ranged from 3,000 to 4,000 calories daily. But wait, there's more. POWs could supplement these rations through commissary purchases, using script earned from labor or provided through Geneva Convention allowances. They could buy cigarettes, chocolate, beer, wine, soft drinks, and even ice cream. Imagine, in the midst of global warfare, enemy combatants enjoying ice cream while their own country was being bombed into rubble. The systematic feeding program required an unprecedented logistical effort. Camp quartermasters had to requisition food for thousands daily, coordinating with regional suppliers, managing vast refrigerated storage facilities, and maintaining kitchens that operated continuously, almost like small factories. The sheer scale and efficiency of this operation exceeded anything the German military had ever attempted, let alone achieved, in feeding its own troops, let alone its enemies. It was an undeniable, tangible demonstration of American industrial and agricultural might. One of the most vivid personal accounts comes from a German prisoner, later documented by historians. When I was captured, I weighed 128 league. After 2 years as an American POW, I weighed 185. I'd gotten so fat you could no longer see my eyes. This wasn't just an isolated anecdote, it was a common narrative. Georg Gartner, a sergeant in Rommel's forces captured in Tunisia in 1943, became known as Hitler's last soldier in America after escaping from Camp Deming, New Mexico, in September 1945. He lived under an alias for 40 years before surrendering in 1985. In his memoir, Gertner described the collective amazement among the POWs at how well they were treated, almost coddled with plentiful meals which their own country couldn't even afford. This wasn't just about survival, it was about comfort. A level of comfort that stunned the prisoners themselves. Military chaplain Alex Funker, imprisoned at Camp Alona, Iowa, reflected on the profound impact. We all were positively impressed by the U.S., and that we all had been won over to friendly relations with the United States. Post-war research by Funker and others confirmed widespread, substantial weight gains, with many prisoners adding 40 to 60 pounds during their captivity. The physical changes were so dramatic that repatriation officers documented cases of prisoners being utterly unrecognizable to their own families. Captain William Burke, processing returning POWs in 1946, reported, "These men departed looking like professional athletes or successful businessmen, not defeated soldiers. Their families expected skeletons. Instead, they got men who looked prosperous." This stark difference would have its own complex psychological repercussions upon their return home. Beyond just food, the camps themselves were marvels of American infrastructure and organizational capacity. Camp Concordia, Kansas, for example, housed approximately 4,000 Germans across hundreds of buildings on 640 acres. Built in just 90 days, it featured electric lighting throughout, hot water systems, flush toilets, and central heating. For many prisoners from rural Germany, accustomed to outhouses and oil lamps, living with such amenities was an eye-opening experience, a tangible sign of a modernity they had only vaguely imagined. The multiple kitchens at Concordia, equipped with modern electric ranges, walk-in refrigerators, industrial mixers, and mechanical dishwashers, were technologies many prisoners had simply never seen before. It wasn't just about food. It was about the means of production. the seamless efficiency of a society that could build and operate such a system, even for its enemies. Camp Hearn, Texas, was famously nicknamed the Fritz Ritz by locals. It held up to 5,000 prisoners who built elaborate recreational facilities, including a miniature golf course and a theater. Its industrial kitchens operated around the clock, with central bakeries producing thousands of loaves daily. Prisoners even established regional mess halls, using American ingredients to recreate the diverse German cuisines they missed. Dishes impossible to find in wartime Germany. The camp's commanding officer, Colonel Donald Drake, implemented a policy he called calories for cooperation. Well-behaved prisoners received extra rations, access to special meals, and commissary privileges. The result? Minimal discipline problems and maximum weight gains. Drake's reports noted average gains of 45 pounds per prisoner over 18 months. This was not just feeding, it was a form of soft power, a subtle but powerful influence. Camp Aliceville, Alabama, faced the grim task of processing the human wreckage from the Desert War. Commanders witnessed the skeletal arrivals and wisely implemented graduated feeding protocols, slowly reintroducing calories to prevent medical complications. The camp's medical staff documented remarkable recoveries, vitamin deficiencies eliminated, dental problems treated. Many prisoners received better dental care than they'd had in their entire lives, and energy restored. Within months, gaunt faces filled out, and chronic diseases disappeared. Major Robert Harrison, Aliceville's medical officer, published a post-war study detailing these recovery patterns, showing exponential weight gain in the first 3 months, followed by steady increases averaging 3 pounds monthly. The most dramatic case he recorded was a prisoner who arrived at 109 pounds and departed at 181 pounds, a staggering 72-pound gain. However, this generosity wasn't without its controversies back home. The disparity between POW treatment and civilian rationing generated intense public anger. While German prisoners enjoyed military rations, American families navigated complex point systems and faced severe scarcity. Sugar, coffee, meat, butter, all restricted for civilians. Yet, POWs received these items daily without limitation. Dorothy Mitchell of Topeka, Kansas, wrote to her congressman in 1944, her words echoing the frustration of millions. "My 3 sons fight in Europe while German prisoners here eat steak twice weekly. I haven't seen steak since Pearl Harbor. My family's monthly meat ration is less than these Nazis eat in 3 days. How do you explain this to a mother?" The government's response emphasized reciprocity, treating German prisoners well-protected American POWs. Propaganda posters proclaimed, "Their good treatment ensures ours." Radio broadcasts stressed that 90,000 American prisoners depended on German compliance with Geneva standards. Yet, public resentment simmered, especially when prisoners worked local farms and visibly ate better than the very farmers employing them. The racial dimensions of this controversy proved particularly inflammatory. Black American soldiers, including Sergeant Rupert Trimmingham, noted the bitter irony that German prisoners could visit restaurants where they, in uniform and with combat ribbons, were barred. Trimmingham's famous letter to Yank magazine described watching German POWs served freely in a Texas restaurant, while he was directed to the kitchen door for takeout. This fundamental injustice, enemy soldiers receiving better treatment than American citizens defending their country, created lasting wounds and highlighted the profound hypocrisy of segregation within a nation fighting for freedom. German prisoners themselves often expressed discomfort, recognizing the injustice even while benefiting. Several camp newspapers run by prisoners published editorials questioning American segregation, creating the peculiar situation of Nazi soldiers critiquing American racial policies. The POW labor program proved crucial to the American war effort, especially in agriculture, while simultaneously contributing significantly to prisoner weight gain. By 1944, over 300,000 POWs worked American fields, harvesting the crops that would feed both America and its allies. The program generated millions in revenue, essentially making the POW camps self-funding, while providing prisoners with supplemental nutrition beyond their camp rations. Farmers, desperate for workers, often competed to treat POW work crews well. Mornings meant farm breakfasts of eggs, bacon, pancakes, and coffee. Noon brought hot meals delivered to the fields: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, pie. Afternoons included cold drinks and snacks. Evenings returned them to camp for another full meal. Combined, their daily intake often exceeded 5,000 calories. In Nebraska's sugar beet fields, prisoners witnessed mechanization that redefined their understanding of agriculture. Hans Dietrich, working near Scottsbluff, wrote, "One American farmer with machines accomplishes what required our entire village." The combine harvester, a marvel of engineering, processed more grain in an hour than his entire German village managed in a week by hand. Texas cotton operations employed thousands of POWs during harvest season. The work was grueling under a blazing sun, but the compensation included unlimited water, regular meal breaks, and bonus food for high producers. Wilhelm Hartmann, picking cotton near Kaufman, gained 63 pounds in 14 months. "The Texas farmers fed us like prize cattle," he recalled. One rancher said, "Can't get good work from hungry men?" If only our officers had understood this. Perhaps the ultimate irony unfolded in California's Central Valley. POWs picked peaches, apricots, and oranges, eating freely while they worked. They watched in disbelief as perfectly good fruit was bulldozed into pits when markets were oversupplied. Kurt Vogel, another prisoner, wrote, "Mountains of oranges destroyed while my family survives on turnips. I begged to send them to Germany." The farmer explained it was economically impossible. Vogel continued, "This waste amid plenty broke something in my understanding of the world. Only a nation of unlimited resources could afford such waste." This wasn't just about food. It was about the fundamental difference in economic systems, in agricultural productivity. In a society so abundant, it could afford to destroy surplus rather than ration scarcity. Military medical officers tracked these biological changes with scientific precision. Major Thomas Richardson, Chief Medical Officer for the 8th Service Command, compiled statistics from 50,000 examinations between 1943 and 1946. His data revealed recovery patterns that would influence post-war nutrition science. The recovery trajectory followed predictable phases. The first month involved digestive system adjustment with minimal weight gain. The second month saw rapid gains, averaging 8 to 10 pounds. Months 3 to 6 brought steady increases of 3 to 4 pounds monthly. After 6 months, gains slowed but continued, with most prisoners adding 40-60 pounds total. Health improvements paralleled weight increases. Vitamin deficiencies disappeared within 90 days. Scurvy cases recovered completely. Night blindness resolved, and dental health improved dramatically. over 400,000 dental procedures were performed on German POWs, from extractions to complex bridge work. German physicians working in camp hospitals documented an unexpected problem: conditions of plenty rather than poverty. Dr. Friedrich Hoffmann at Camp Buttner noted, "We see diabetes emerging in men who survived on 1,000 calories, hypertension in soldiers who had low blood pressure from malnutrition, gout from rich foods. These are diseases of prosperity appearing in former prisoners of starvation." This medical irony underscored the profound transformation these men underwent. Their bodies, having adapted to extreme deprivation, now struggled to cope with an abundance previously unimaginable. The psychological impact paralleled the physical changes, often creating profound distress. Camp psychiatrists reported widespread guilt about gaining weight while their families starved. Captain James Murray documented prosperity trauma, the mental anguish of experiencing improving health and comfort amidst the suffering and collapse of their homeland. Prisoners expressed shame at their appearance, anxiety about explaining their condition to families, and deep guilt about enjoying meals while Germany was being reduced to rubble. Christmas 1944 presented the starkest contrast between American plenty and German poverty. While the Battle of the Bulge raged, while German civilians received meager turnip rations, American camps served holiday feasts that exceeded anything prisoners had experienced even before the war. Camp menus from December 24th or 25th, 1944, preserved in military archives, document extraordinary meals. Roast turkey, averaging 5 pounds per man. Glazed ham with pineapple, mashed potatoes with butter and cream, sweet potato casserole, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, fresh baked rolls, multiple varieties of pie, ice cream, eggnog for officers, and unlimited coffee and cocoa. Churches and civic organizations contributed beyond official rations. The Methodist Women of Hearne, Texas, delivered 2,000 homemade cookies to Camp Hearne. Concordia's Lutheran congregation provided hand-knitted scarves for every prisoner. Even communities struggling with rationing shared their allocations with enemy prisoners, an expression of American generosity that many prisoners found utterly incomprehensible. Feldwebel Richard Steinberg described the scene. "We sat before this feast knowing our families had nothing. Men wept openly, not from joy, but from the weight of contrast. How could we celebrate while Germany starved? How could we refuse this kindness from enemies? We ate in silence, each bite a betrayal and a blessing combined." The psychological burden of this juxtaposition was immense, a silent testimony to the moral and emotional complexities of war. Despite this extraordinary treatment, escape attempts remained minimal, just 2,222 attempts from 425,000 prisoners, with virtually no permanent successes except for Georg Gertner's temporary freedom. This 0.5% attempt rate was the lowest of any major POW population in modern warfare. The reason was simple. The camps offered better conditions than freedom. The Great Papago Park escape of December 1944 illustrated this futility perfectly. 25 U-boat officers spent months digging a 178-foot tunnel with spoons, hiding the excavated dirt in a volleyball court they'd convinced guards to let them build. Their elaborate plan was to float down the Salt River to Mexico. The river, however, was dry. Within 3 weeks, all were recaptured, most surrendering voluntarily when hunger struck. Captain Jürgen Wutenberg, the escape leader, reflected decades later. "We were ideological idiots. Inside the camp, we had food, shelter, safety, even entertainment. Outside was desert, hostility, and certain recapture. We risked everything to escape from paradise into hell. It made no logical sense, only ideological sense, and ideology doesn't fill stomachs. Most prisoners recognized this reality. Where would they go? How would they survive, speaking limited English with German accents, lacking documents or money, in a vast country where every citizen was alert for escapees? More importantly, remaining in camp meant survival. Escaping meant returning to combat if successful, or starvation if not. The experience in America shattered more than just hunger. It shattered ideologies. POWs working near factories witnessed production that redefined their understanding of industrial capacity. At Campbell Soup facilities, they watched single production lines process more food hourly than German factories managed daily. Near Detroit's Willow Run plant, they observed B-24 bombers rolling off assembly lines every 63 minutes, faster than Germany could produce training aircraft. The psychological impact was devastating. Otto Lai, an engineer from Kiel who worked near a steel mill producing 10,000 tons daily, later wrote, "We finally understood this wasn't a war between armies, but between industrial systems. They could lose 10 tanks for every one they destroyed and still win. Mathematics made our defeat inevitable, regardless of courage or strategy. Agricultural productivity proved equally stunning. American farms yielded twice German rates per acre using a quarter of the labor. Mechanization allowed single farmers to cultivate areas requiring dozens of workers in Germany. Irrigation, fertilization, and hybrid seeds created harvests that seemed miraculous to prisoners from subsistence farms. The sheer scale and efficiency of American capitalism, often contrasted with the waste observed, mountains of potatoes left to rot, grain burned, milk poured into sewers to maintain prices, created a powerful, undeniable impression. Franz Müller wrote, "They destroy food to stabilize markets while Europe starves. Only a nation of unlimited resources could afford such waste." He concluded, "We finally understood American power, not in their armies, but in their excess." Between 1945 and 1946, ships carried over 370,000 German POWs back to Europe. They departed America, having collectively gained millions of pounds, living monuments to American prosperity returning to ruins. The contrast proved tragic on multiple levels. Returning prisoners faced devastated cities, starving families, and intense social tensions. Their healthy appearance, often plump and well-nourished, marked them as different, privileged, somehow complicit with the enemy. Families struggled to understand how they'd gained weight in captivity while Germany starved. Communities resented their prosperity amidst universal poverty. The physical reversal was swift and brutal. Military government surveys tracked former POWs losing 30 to 50 pounds within 6 months of their return. Bodies built on American rations simply couldn't survive on German scarcity. 150 calories daily, if fortunate, often less. The American weight disappeared, leaving men who looked older than when captured, despite their captivity's comfort. Heinrich Weber returned to Hamburg weighing 186 pounds, up from 134 at capture. 6 months later, he weighed 138 pounds. The American body couldn't survive on German rations, he explained. I gave my food to my children, lived on potato peels and stolen grain. Better to have known hunger continuously than to know fullness and lose it. It was a cruel re-entry into a broken world. Beyond physical nourishment, the camps provided comprehensive education that would shape post-war Germany. Over 50,000 prisoners enrolled in courses ranging from agriculture to philosophy. Camp Concordia alone offered 300 subjects, with professors from nearby universities teaching everything from American history to automotive repair. The curriculum deliberately included democratic governance, free market economics, and constitutional law, subjects banned in Nazi Germany. Prisoners studied the Federalist Papers, Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill. They debated governance models, economic systems, and social contracts. This intellectual feeding paralleled the physical nourishment, expanding minds while building bodies. Camp newspapers evolved from propaganda organs to democratic forums. Der Ruf, the call. Circulating to 25,000 prisoners, published debates about Germany's future, democracy's strengths, and economic reconstruction. Its evolution from Nazi mouthpiece to democratic voice traced the ideological journey of its readers. Dr. Wilhelm von Braun, teaching physics at Camp Shelby while imprisoned, noted, "We had better facilities than most German universities, laboratory equipment, textbooks, and academic freedom. Jewish professors who'd fled Germany taught alongside us without hatred." This generosity of knowledge, sharing education with enemies, revealed profound American confidence in its system. The Special Projects Division's secret re-education program achieved remarkable success through demonstration rather than indoctrination. By 1945, 25,000 prisoners had voluntarily enrolled in democracy courses. They studied documents banned in Germany, discussed concepts punishable by death under Nazi rule. The program succeeded because it relied on evidence rather than propaganda. Prisoners saw democracy functioning daily. They experienced free speech in camp newspapers, and they observed racial problems discussed openly in American media. Self-criticism impossible in totalitarian systems. Every pound they gained was proof that democracy produced prosperity. Former Wehrmacht officers who had sworn oaths to Hitler found themselves planning democratic reconstruction. Colonel Hans von Luck, a veteran of campaigns in Poland, France, and Africa, wrote, "We arrived as convinced Nazis. We departed as reluctant Democrats, not through brainwashing, but through observation. Their system worked. Ours had failed. The evidence was in our expanded waistlines." This wasn't merely a shift in allegiance. It was a fundamental reevaluation of the world, driven by undeniable, tangible proof. Approximately 5,000 former POWs eventually immigrated to America, becoming citizens of the nation that had imprisoned them. Thousands more maintained correspondence with American families for decades. These relationships, born in extraordinary circumstances, created unexpected bridges between former enemies. The immigration process wasn't simple. Former POWs faced suspicion in Germany as potential American sympathizers, and suspicion in America as former enemies. Yet many persevered, drawn by memories of prosperity and possibility. Marriage created the strongest bonds. Despite regulations forbidding fraternization, romances developed through correspondence and work programs. Over 1,000 German POWs eventually married American women they'd met during or shortly after captivity. These families embodied reconciliation. Former enemies united through love rather than conquest. A 1985 reunion in Austin drew 500 former prisoners, returning with American-born children and grandchildren. Hans Ka delivered the keynote. We came as enemies, left as friends, arrived starving, departed overweight. Every pound gained was a lesson in democracy's productivity. Every meal a demonstration of freedom's fruits. The POW program's economics defied conventional warfare logic. Costing hundreds of millions, it generated nearly equivalent value in agricultural and industrial labor, essentially self-funding, while achieving immeasurable strategic benefits. Each well-fed prisoner became inadvertent testimony to American strength. Their expanded bodies, proof of American capacity. The program achieved multiple objectives simultaneously. It protected American POWs through reciprocity. Germany treated American prisoners better than Soviet prisoners, partly due to American treatment of Germans. It alleviated critical labor shortages with POWs, harvesting crops that fed both America and its allies. Most importantly, it transformed enemies into potential allies through a powerful, undeniable demonstration of prosperity, freedom, and human dignity. Post-war analysis revealed the program's profound influence on German Reconstruction. Former POWs implemented American agricultural methods, increasing German yields by 30% within 5 years. They introduced American management techniques, helping to drive the Wirtschaftswunder, Germany's economic miracle. Their experience shaped a generation of German leaders oriented toward American partnership rather than Soviet influence. Colonel James Patterson's 1947 analysis concluded, "We purchased future peace with present food." The collective weight gain, millions of pounds, represented American agricultural surplus converted into political capital that paid dividends throughout the Cold War. The German POWs who gained 50-plus pounds in American camps embodied World War II's deepest irony. While their homeland starved, they thrived. While their families queued for turnips, they chose between dishes. While their comrades died on the Eastern Front, they attended movies and played soccer. This impossible reality, enemies eating better than allies, proved strategically brilliant. Their physical growth testified to a profound truth. America could afford generosity, even in total war. Democracy could feed even its enemies. Freedom produced plenty, while tyranny produced poverty. The 57-pound gain documented by one prisoner was replicated thousands of times. Each pound, evidence of American agricultural and industrial supremacy. In the final analysis, America's greatest weapon wasn't its armies or its arsenals, but its dinner tables. Tables large enough to feed enemies, generous enough to transform warriors into witnesses, abundant enough to purchase lasting peace through temporary plenty. The German POWs discovered their true enemy wasn't America, but the ideology that had led them to war against such prosperity. Every pound gained was a pound of Nazi ideology lost. Every meal a lesson in democratic productivity. Every full belly testimony to freedom's capacity to create rather than destroy. They returned to Germany heavier in body, but enlightened in spirit, carrying within their transformed flesh the seeds of reconciliation and the memory of impossible generosity from a nation powerful enough to feed even those who came to destroy it. The lesson here is profound and enduring. In a world often defined by conflict and retribution, the American POW program during WWII stands as a testament to the power of strategic generosity, the long-term vision of peace, and the undeniable strength of a system built on freedom and abundance. It teaches us that sometimes The most effective weapon in a war is not a bomb or a bullet, but a plate of food, served with dignity, transforming enemies not through subjugation, but through demonstration. It's a powerful reminder that true strength lies not just in what you can destroy, but in what you can build, what you can sustain, and whom you can ultimately inspire.